Joining us now on the News at 10 to discuss this funding problem and the way to get out of it is Sports Administrator Godwin Kienka. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10 tonight. Many issues raised by Austin in his reports there, but the major issue, of course, is funding. Why is that a persistent issue?
I think the minister touched on it, somewhat sitting in the fence. Funding is an issue largely because there has not been sincerity of purpose and selflessness in the running of sports in Nigeria. To go straight to the point, I think that there is a lot of money in the system, but a lot of the administrators are more comfortable dealing with government because when they get funds from government, they can spend it, they don't have to account for it and all that. The private sector has a lot of cachet of funds which they are ready to bring on to the private, to sports. But first, they have to have confidence in the administration, especially with the federations. And then they have to, when they bring that money in, they have to make sure that the money is used for the purposes for which they are meant. That's one.
You're trying to explain what the minister was saying, that the federation has to create an enabling environment for the private sector.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So first, the government has to also create the right environment. Sports is largely a private sector concern. It's not a government's concern. Just one example, the Swimming Federation, which in our understanding in America, derives 57% of its funding from membership, 14% from sundry investments. They get about, I think, 16% from the U.S. Olympic Committee. To cut the long story short, they don't get a dime from government. Okay, but here the federations have refused to open up the federations to membership and give the membership some incentives to bring in the funds. If the Nigerian Tennis Federation or the Football Federation allows membership and each member only pays 20,000 naira, our research shows that they can get about 1 million people bringing in some money, and that's 20 billion naira right there. So the money is possible as long as these federations are ready to open up the federations to private sector involvement and have sincerity of purpose, not be selfish, because if the membership is large and they have right to install and remove, say, the president or the executives, 2 million Nigerians will be fee-paying members of the Tennis Federation. And there are other ways they can raise these funds. So the funds are there.
Yeah, but why is it so hard to access these funds? Why is it so hard to get the private sector on board? But I know you mentioned accountability and sincerity of purpose, but why is it so difficult to achieve that in the federation?
Yes, because most of the federation up to this moment are not comfortable, I repeat that, to open up the federations to scrutiny. The funds are, they are shrouded in mystery. Let's take one example, the Nigerian Lottery Fund Limited. We do not know how much that body has. It's supposed to, some of its fund is supposed to go to good causes, which includes sports. But the last time we heard anything about them, they were using the funds to buy table tennis to distribute to primary schools all over the country. And the cost of even transporting these equipment to the various primary schools in the States was probably as close to the cost of the equipment itself. So a country like South Africa is using the lottery funds to finance sports development. Britain is doing the same. And I think that as long as we have sports administrators, federation presidents, federation executives, and government officials, luckily the present minister is divesting himself from such activity. As long as we have them more comfortable with government funds, they close the door to private sector involvement.
You mentioned South Africa. I'd like to explore that a little bit more, what we can emulate from them. Because you see the frustration on our own athletes' faces. I mean, it's quite demoralizing to get to somewhere and find out that no provisions have been made for you at all.
That's correct. But I'm telling you that if the government can only tickle or excite the private sector just a little bit, I can promise you that in the next Olympics or the ones after, we can be guaranteed at least 5 gold medals, coming from Nigeria. And how? We recommended, as chairman of the Sports Reform Committee, that we incentivize performance. That is, there has to be performance and reward. Now, if you have a policy where the winner of the Olympic gold medal gets 10 million naira, a silver medalist is 5 million, and the bronze medalist is 3 million, the private sector is going to go in there as in a flood. Let's take boxing.
Yeah, and I wish we could explore that further, but we have to cut this conversation short. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ikenga, beg your pardon, on the News at 10.
Thank you very much.